Hey, welcome or welcome back to the Stash. Before Spider-Man, before the Avengers, before the X-Men, there was the Fantastic Four. Superheroes as the world knew them were larger-than-life figures, flawless, untouchable, and godlike. But in 1961, Marvel Comics threw all of that out the window. Fantastic Four issue 1 wasn't just another superhero story, it was a revolution. It wasn't a tale of caped icons battling evil. Instead, it was raw, it was human, and most of all, it was different. When Marvel Comics was on the brink of irrelevance, when Stan Lee was ready to walk away from the industry for good, one comic changed everything. It wasn't the pristine perfection of Superman or the unwavering justice of Batman. It was something messier, something real. The Fantastic Four didn't wear masks, they didn't hide behind secret identities, and most importantly, they didn't get along. These were characters who felt like people. Flawed, passionate, stubborn, and vulnerable. Their stories weren't just about punching bad guys. They were about discovery, about pushing the boundaries of what it meant to be a hero. It introduced a new kind of storytelling that would shape the Marvel Universe and redefine what comic books could be. This was the spark that lit the Marvel Age of comics and was, and in ways still is, the crucial foundation of everything that followed. So join us today as we go over how Fantastic Four redefined an entire medium and why more than 60 years later, they still matter. Before we get into that though, I just want to take a quick second to say that here at The Stash, we're trying to reach 7,000 subscribers before the end of the month. It's a huge ask, but with your help, I know we can do it. So if you like Fantastic Four or just comic content in general, feel free to stick around and maybe hit that subscribe button. And also, if you want to go the extra mile, consider becoming a channel member. For only $5 Australian, you'll get exclusive badges, custom emojis, behind the scenes updates, as well as your own video requests. But anyway, with all that being said, let's jump right back into the video. In the late 1950s, superhero comics were at a low point. The golden age of the 1940s had faded, and while DC Comics had found some success revitalizing characters like the Flash and Green Lantern, most superhero stories were still formulaic and one-dimensional. Marvel was honestly struggling. Stan Lee, who'd worked in comics for years, was on the verge of quitting the industry altogether. But then came an opportunity. DC's Justice League of America was selling well, and Marvel's publisher Martin Goodman wanted to replicate that success. Stan Lee, reluctant to create another traditional superhero team, decided to do something different. Partnering with artist Jack Kirby, he crafted a team that felt more like a dysfunctional family than a group of godlike heroes. The Fantastic Four were ordinary people who gained extraordinary abilities, but their powers didn't make their lives easier. Instead, they made them more complicated. Reed Richards, the team's leader, was brilliant but emotionally distant. His best friend Ben Grimm was transformed into the monstrous thing and struggled with self-acceptance. Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, was impulsive and immature, while his sister Sue Storm initially seemed like the weakest member, only to later become the emotional core and secret powerhouse of the team. Unlike the Justice League, the Fantastic Four didn't operate in secret. They didn't even wear costumes at the start. Their stories weren't about simply fighting crime, but about discovery, adventure, and the complexities of family. This fresh take captivated readers, making Fantastic Four issue 1 a hit and launching what would become the Marvel Age of comics. Now when I go out and collect comics, there's always something so magical about holding a Silver Age Fantastic Four book. These issues had a kind of prestige feeling to them, an almost legendary quality that set them apart from anything else in the collection. The yellowed pages, the bold Jack Kirby artwork, and the sense of boundless creativity made them feel like artifacts from a bygone era of storytelling. Every time I find one in a local comic shop or get lucky through eBay, it feels like uncovering a piece of history. Like I'm staring at a constant reminder of the magic comics can hold. And honestly, that stuck with me from my childhood up till now. That sense of privilege you feel when you're a new owner of a Fantastic Four issue. And when I started reading them, that feeling, that understanding, only became stronger and stronger. Each story was a blast, a genre-defining marvel of the 60s. After each read, you properly know why it was called the world's greatest comic mag. You know why it was adored all those decades ago. And all I wanted to do after finishing one issue was get straight on to the next. One of the most groundbreaking aspects of the Fantastic Four was its character relationships. They weren't just teammates, they were a family, and like any family, they had conflicts, rivalries, and moments of deep affection. Reed and Sue's relationship was often tested by his obsession with science, a dynamic that would evolve over the years. Ben Grimm, cursed with the form of the Thing, often resented Reed for his transformation, despite their brotherly bond. Johnny Storm, the hot-headed teenager, often teased Ben but looked up to Reed as a surrogate father figure. This dynamic made them feel real. Unlike Superman, who was practically invulnerable, or Batman, who was an untouchable symbol of justice, the Fantastic Four were flawed, emotional, and relatable. Reed wasn't always right. Sue wasn't just the damsel in distress. Ben and Johnny weren't just comic relief. Their flaws made them feel human, and their growth over time set a precedent for more complex character development in comics. And the influence of this dynamic was so electric, so groundbreaking, that it stretched beyond the Fantastic Four and even Marvel as a whole. Teams like the X-Men and later the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles borrowed heavily from the Fantastic Four's formula, proving that a superhero team worked best when it felt like a real family. At the core of this dynamic though was the emotional depth of each character, and for me, no character exemplified this more than Ben Grimm. His struggle with his monstrous form was more than just a superpowered burden. It was a brutal and sometimes beautiful experience of self-doubt and resilience. His relationship with the team, especially his complicated friendship with Reed, added layers to the Fantastic Four's family dynamic, making their bond feel even stronger. His storylines were often the most compelling, blending action with themes of acceptance and personal growth, and in my experience with FF Comics, one of the most captivating aspects of the Fantastic Four was Ben Grimm's journey as the Thing. Stories like This Man, This Monster weren't just about the classic Jack Kirby action scenes, but rather more emotional, introspective tales about self-worth and what it truly means to accept yourself. Ben was more than just the team's muscle. He was a tragic yet hopeful figure who struggled with his identity, his anger, and his longing to be normal again. Those stories resonated with me on a personal level. It honestly made the Fantastic Four feel richer and more meaningful, like a league above the rest, especially during the Silver Age. Reading the issues from that iconic era, I couldn't help but be drawn into Ben's pain, his humor, and his resilience. And the best part is that even decades later, his character remains one of the most compelling in comic book history. Before the MCU made the Marvel Universe feel interconnected, Fantastic Four did it first. Nearly every major character and concept that defined Marvel's universe can trace its roots back to the FF. Dr. Doom, one of the greatest villains in comic history, was introduced, as I'm sure you all know, in Fantastic Four issue 5, bringing with him an unparalleled combination of intellect, mysticism, and tragedy. The Skrulls, Marvel's first shape-shifting alien race, made their debut in Fantastic Four issue 2, while the return of Namor the Submariner in Fantastic Four issue 4 reintroduced Golden Age history into the modern Marvel timeline. Not to mention nearly every hero and team having at least one interaction with the Fantastic Four back in the 60s. You had the X-Men, Avengers, Spider-Man, Daredevil, everyone. Not to mention the importance of this series, how it broke new ground by introducing the Black Panther in issue 52 of the Fantastic Four. This book earned the world's greatest comic magazine tagline in every way possible. I mean seriously, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, when it came to this title, were operating on a whole different level entirely. Their creativity knew no bounds, and it felt like at one point they genuinely couldn't miss. And I believe the best example that demonstrates that has got to be the way they brought the cosmic world into Marvel. I love how the roots of the Fantastic Four pre-Powers never left them. For the FF weren't just heroes, they were explorers, and this constantly being at the forefront of their adventures opened gateways to new worlds and new possibilities within the Marvel realm. Unlike most superhero comics at the time, Fantastic Four was heavily inspired by science fiction. Lee and Kirby envisioned them as adventurers rather than crime fighters, and that's one simple choice that elevated their books to a whole new level. Their missions took them to other dimensions, deep space, and alternate realities long before such ideas were commonplace in comics. The introduction of Galactus and the Silver Surfer was a game changer. Galactus was more than a villain. He was a force of nature, a godlike being beyond morality. Then there's the Silver Surfer, his tragic herald. He introduced a philosophical element to superhero storytelling, questioning fate, free will, and the burden of power. Leading up to those 3 issues was like a countdown to a massive event, and I could feel the weight of the impending doom right alongside the characters. The moment the Watcher appeared to warn them of Galactus, the tension became even more intense. Every panel, every exchange between the characters felt like a moment in history, a defining milestone in not just Marvel, but comics as a whole. I was so enthralled within their world. It was like I too was facing the same stakes, staring up at the sky, watching as the end of the world approached. That story didn't just pull me in, it consumed me. It made me feel the sheer insignificance of humanity in the face of something so incomprehensibly vast. And yet, at the heart of it all was the Fantastic Four, standing tall together, determined to do the impossible. It was incredible, and I genuinely believe that any comic fan needs to read that masterpiece at least once in their life. The Fantastic Four, especially in the Silver Age, laid the groundwork for Marvel's cosmic landscape, from the Negative Zone to the Kree-Skull conflict, and it's a genuine testament to not only their importance to Marvel and the comic world, but also just how amazing their comics are. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's partnership was the foundation of the Fantastic Four's success. Lee provided the dialogue and the overarching vision, while Kirby brought dynamic storytelling through his legendary art. His visuals were larger than life, introducing the Kirby crackle and breathtaking cosmic designs. Everything about Jack Kirby, especially in the Silver Age, was perfection. The Marvel method of storytelling, where Kirby would often take loose scripts and expand them visually, was in full force, and made Fantastic Four feel epic and expansive. It's the team in comics. Over 100 incredible issues in a row. But here's the thing, it's just sad how their time together ended on a bitter note. As I'm sure you all know by now, the feud between Stan and Jack went on for ages, until eventually, Kirby left Marvel. His departure marked the end of an era. And while the Fantastic Four continued, it was never quite the same without his visionary artwork. Now, despite their foundational role in Marvel history, the Fantastic Four has often struggled in adaptations. Multiple film attempts failed to capture the essence of the team, either focusing too much on action or failing to embrace their adventurous, family-driven storytelling methods. However, the upcoming MCU film offers hope. And that's something I haven't said in a while about the MCU, especially with its 1960s setting, which could finally do justice to the team's origins. I won't lie to you, that trailer alone made me go from not even remotely interested to now completely interested. In a way, it's revitalized my passion for the first family of Marvel, giving me a newfound sense of motivation to continue that reading journey. For the first time in a while, I'm actually excited by something in the MCU. Yes, there's a couple of choices that still really bother me, but overall, there's a really strong foundation here for something unique and special. And I, for one, cannot wait to see this movie day one in theaters. Marvel, have Johnny Rap flame on, my life is yours.
Flame on, flame on, and on, and on, flame on, flame on, flame on.
The Fantastic Four weren't just another superhero team. They were Marvel's first family, the backbone of an entire universe. They weren't just crime fighters, they were adventurers, explorers, dreamers. Their stories weren't about stopping bank robbers or supervillains of the week. They were about venturing into the unknown, standing against impossible odds, and proving that heroism isn't just about power, it's about heart. This comic introduced serialized storytelling, complex character relationships, and ambitious world building, paving the way for everything that followed. They set the standard for what a superhero team could be, not just allies in battle, but people who love, fight, and grow together. Without them, there's no X-Men, no Avengers, no shared Marvel universe as we know it. Their legacy lives on, and as Marvel Studios prepare to bring them back to the big screen, one thing is for certain: the Fantastic Four still matter, and they always will. Because at the end of the day, they aren't just superheroes, they are a symbol of everything comics can be: imaginative, emotional, and above all else, timeless.